I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. Like I was telling everybody in the green room before we got started, this is one of the most special events that we've done this year. Super excited. That's all because of our special guest, Rand Fishkin, who quite frankly doesn't need an introduction, but I'm going to introduce him anyways. We have over 500 folks registered for today, all to hear what Rand has to say about Clickless future, AI, lots of great topics we're going to dig into today. But Rand is truly like the godfather of marketing and one of my marketing heroes. And one of the reasons why, Rand, you're my marketing hero is you believe very deeply in something that I've always believed in, and that is that education is marketing. In fact, I found you 15 years ago or so, however long, I don't even know, but it was a long time ago, way over 10 years ago, back in the Moz days when you were doing the Whiteboard Fridays. And man, just giving away, spilling the beans on all the things that were working. Many of those things we're going to talk about the counter being true today. But that's how I found out about Rand. That's how I found out about Moz. We became a Moz customer long time ago. Now, Rand is the co-founder of SparkToro, which is an audience research software tool that we also use at Vindy to help our clients understand where their audiences are hanging out online. But Rand, you've just always been like one step ahead, like back in the search days. Then you were talking about branding. Now you're talking about the Clickless future and AI and the impacts of AI and buyer behavior changing. And so we're just super excited for you to be here today. Rand, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Paul. You're right. No intro needed. Let's get right to the meat.
Yeah, let's get into it. Let's get into it. So also wanted to quickly introduce Lauren. If you've been on any of our shows before, Lauren's going to moderate chat for us. And, as we go through it today, Rand and I will be, as we're having our fireside chat, it's 95 degrees in Dallas today. Not going to have a fire, but we're going to have a chat. It'll be like a fireside chat, just no fire. But we'll be looking at your comments. We'll try to weave those in. And if there's time at the end, we'll tee up and curate a few questions that you want answered by Rand, and we'll do that as well. So if you've got a copy of the agenda, and we'll drop that a couple of times as we go through here today, there's 5 topics that we've identified, Rand, that we really wanted to talk to you about. And the first topic, I think, is going to be a spicy one. So I'm excited to get into it. And that is, you've said a lot recently that traffic is a vanity metric. And so the interesting thing about that is, if you go back and watch some of Rand's Whiteboard Fridays from 10 or 15 years ago, you might have said the exact opposite thing. So what the heck is going on?
Yeah. I mean, 2 things. One is that back in the day, I think I was incorrect about how traffic functioned. And in fact, most of the brands that built successfully over the last 25 years on and off the web did not build it through ranking number 1 in Google. They built it through brand marketing. And then the second thing that's going on is that traffic is much harder to come by than it ever was. In 2008, a quarter of all searches that happened on Google ended without a click. And today that number is almost 2/3. So we're talking about just a sea change of traffic differences. In 2010, Facebook and Twitter were huge referrers of traffic, especially to media and content sites. Today, they send next to no traffic at all. They keep every platform, LinkedIn, Reddit, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, they're all hoarding traffic on their own platforms. This is what's called the zero-click internet, right? It's the clickless future that you talked about is because we like to go like this and we hate to go like this, right? Swipe, not click. And that has really changed the dynamics of how digital marketing works. So in past times, you would work very hard to optimize your content and your promotion, right? Your promotion through search and through social to get clicks, to drive clicks to your website. And then once people got to your site, you would try to improve your conversion rate from visitor to sale. Today, that is a pretty dumb way to do things. It's a dumb way to do things because it's so much harder to drive that traffic, and because the platforms themselves have actually become places where you can influence the conversion, right? When someone searches in Google for audience research tools, best audience research software. SparkToro's job isn't to be number one. It's to make that overview, the AI overview, or the description, the snippet, right, the featured element, to make that compelling in a way that people are going to say, oh, that sounds really good. I should check out SparkToro. That same thing that should be happening when they go to ChatGPT and say, hey, how do I figure out where my, this particular audience is hanging out on the web, or which social networks are more popular with them, or whether they're adopting AI tools more or less than the rest of Americans. And hopefully, if we do our jobs right through campaigns of influence, ChatGPT will give the answer that includes SparkToro. It probably won't have a link. It will probably drive no direct traffic. Even if it does drive traffic, we will never be able to attribute it to ChatGPT. But it is changing minds and influencing people. Just like your favorite sports team has managed to convince you to call yourself us.
Yeah, exactly.
Part of them, right?
What's crazy too, Rand? If somebody does go and say, what is the best audience research tool in ChatGPT, and they see SparkToro as the answer or one of the answers, what are they going to do? They're going to go to Google and type in SparkToro and then click. And so who gets the credit for that?
Yeah. Lauren, I don't know if you can share the study with people, like the URL through the chat, but SEMrush did a study just a few weeks ago where they looked at what happens after people start using ChatGPT. So they looked at cohorts from January, February, and March, I think, of this year. And then they looked at their search behavior. So this is via clickstream data, Datos, which is the company that powers SparkToro's audience research data, was also used in their study. And so in that study, what you can see, right, Paul, is that people's use of Google spikes when they start using ChatGPT, and it stays higher than normal. Like it eventually declines, but it stays higher than it was prior to their use of ChatGPT, suggesting that when people start using AI tools, they also start searching more.
Exactly.
Because AI tools give you answers that you then need to go Google.
Right. Yeah, it's so crazy, and we'll get into SEO and AI and Google and all those things here in a little bit, because that is, as a digital marketer, I get that question all the time. Like, what the heck is going on with Google? Where's all my Google traffic? And I want to make sure that we talk about that. But getting back to this concept of traffic being a vanity metric, I think I heard you say this in one of your posts or maybe a podcast about, and I think it was a HubSpot report that said that 60% of marketers are still taking web traffic as like their number one KPI. What would you say to those folks that are thinking about, hey, this is how I'm going to measure my success and prove to my boss that I'm doing a good job in 2026?
I don't blame the marketers. I think the vast majority of marketers understand the situation. They know exactly what's going on. They understand that traffic is a vanity metric because it fundamentally is, right? Traffic is not sales. Unless you're a media company who monetizes on CPM ads, right? Traffic is merely an indicator of how many people landed on the site, not telling you how much revenue you made. I think the problem lies with the execs. They are used to traffic being a KPI from the last quarter century of metrics and reporting. And it takes a long time to change those habits and change those thought patterns. And so I think for marketers, the bad news is that it's your job to change their minds. You have to go and have the same conversation we're having right now and show them the data about, hey, all the social networks, traffic is declining. They're all trying to keep people on the site. All the AI tools send out less than 1% of all their traffic to anybody else on the web. And when they do, it's mostly to Google and YouTube. YouTube sends out almost no traffic. Google is sending out less and less traffic. Like every single platform. The only exception here is Google Discover. That's like the only thing that's growing in terms of referrals, which we could talk about, but we're talking about a very small platform compared to the others.
Right.
And so every one of these places is doing this, and you have to convince your boss and team not only that that is a reality, but also that traffic was always a vanity metric, and that influence, the decisions that people are making, they are happening on the platforms before they ever reach your website. If you've waited to influence people until they get to your site, you've lost. When someone Googles, best thing or recommended thing in your field, they go to ChatGPT and they ask about it in their prompt. They go to social media and they start, talking to their friends and searching and following accounts that, have recommendations. You have lost if you're not present in those places, influencing people on the platform.
Yeah, I'll drive.
You have to change.
Yeah, there's a
you've got
really
to change
great
your marketing
study.
from, I'm just saying you have to change your marketing from we market to people who land on our website to we market on the internet in the places people pay attention.
That's exactly right. The study I was going to refer to, and this is big in the world of B2B, Harvard Business Review did a study a couple of years ago where they went to B2B buyers and they said, when you're about to prioritize a project, what does that look like? And what they discovered is that before they even begin the research phase, they have 3 to 5 vendors already in mind. So there's some mind share that has been won. Now, the amazing thing about that is on the other side of the sales process, so like 8 months later, a year later, however long those sales cycles take, that the B2B buyers, 95% of them bought from one of those 3 to 5 vendors. They bought from one of those 3 to 5 vendors. So if we haven't won mind share, we're not going to win market share. And, to your point, how do we educate up? How do we manage up, Rand? I think it has a lot to do with communicating to our bosses, the C-suite, that, hey, it's not that if people aren't clicking, it doesn't mean they're not buying. So we still need to optimize for helping them buy from us and really kind of get away from this funnel concept and start focusing on the buyer journey and the information requirements that they have as they go through the journey and what is the best way to get that information in their hands, which is not your website. I mean, I think that's one of the key things about this. And so, Rand, let's talk a little bit about measurement. So, if my number one KPI is clicks, and maybe I shouldn't make that my KPI anymore, but I need to measure something, what are the right things for us to be measuring in the future?
Yeah. So I don't actually totally mind the funnel concept. I think there are people at the start of their journey or before they start their journey. There are people who are in process of a journey that will turn into, them buying or learning about the topic. And then there's people who are, at the consideration phase where they're about to make that purchase and then the sale itself. And at each of those levels, there are things that you can measure. So there's sort of like, hey, this is the broad group of people who are in our world. They have the terms in their bio that suggest they're the right kinds of customers for us. They are performing these kinds of searches in Google, right? Here's search volume numbers around generic broad phrases. And that'll give you a sense of like market sizing, right? Here's whatever we're selling to accountants. Well, how many professional accountants are there in the United States who work at agencies and not in-house, and not in-house? If that's your market, like, okay, here it is. And how many different accounting groups? Good. That's market size, right? All the way at the top. And then the next thing is consideration. How many people are looking for software, right? Okay, well, we're going to see, we're going to get some estimates of, number of AI prompts that contain that from, a clickstream provider. And we're going to look at Google search volume data, and we're going to get like this sense of that. And then we're going to measure how much is our brand coming up there. Like when people search Google, go to AI tools, go to social media, what's the rough sizing? So followers on social media, number of views in Google. I think views is especially branded searches, right? Like those kinds of things. Those are all measurement tools. The frustrating part of all this is there's no one KPI anymore. You're measuring a whole bunch of things around your marketing funnel and the people who are in your world and potentially considering your world. And then you're looking at that over time so that you can say, oh, we are improving our market share with this group, but this audience is shrinking. That's why our results are going down. Instead of, hey, marketing, you're not driving enough clicks, which is just, like that is the wrong conclusion to potentially take from a shrinking market. And instead saying, oh, this is a shrinking market, we need to target a new one. What's the new market that's growing that we're going to be targeting? How do we reach those people? Where are they paying attention? What's their sources of influence? Let's be present in those places. Let's measure our impact there. And then we're going to look at the bottom of funnel sales that are hopefully improving as a result.
Yeah, what's
Yeah,
interesting
we've
is
been talking to folks about. Go ahead, Lauren.
no, I was just going to say what's interesting to me with what Rand just said is a lot of the metrics that have been devalued recently. Well, not recently, like pre the Clickless feature, are taking on a lot more value. Like you mentioned, followers and even just like views. Like those were seen as not nothing, but not like as
vanity.
yeah.
Yeah. I used to tell people
I mean,
all the time that. Go ahead, Rand.
I was going to say, I like YouTube views. I like post impressions on, whatever, LinkedIn or Twitter or Reddit. This is hyper tactical, but one of the most successful campaigns I've run recently is to take some of the research that we're talking about right now, some of the research that I published from Datos and all that, and I submit it to some of the subreddits, and with a few hundred upvotes, not very much, I will get hundreds of thousands of views.
Wow.
It will be featured in Google Images, right? So like when reporters go searching for data, they often do a search, they click to Google Images, they see what comes up. If the Reddit data is beautiful thing, they look for the source, they come to me. I was just interviewed yesterday by, one of the biggest newspapers in the US because of this, exactly that, right? And like that sort of measurement, right, of impressions was just badmouthed for years by people like Paul and I, right? Like we did that. We stood on stages and we're like, oh, views, what a bunch of baloney. And now I'm like, hey, that matters. Like that's what you should be measuring.
Yeah, we just we had a pipeline briefing with our clients. It's the first one we've ever done a couple of months ago, and we were talking about this clickless future. And we also introduced 6 new ways to measure success. And to your point, Rand, one of the first things we talked about was impressions to pipe and impressions to revenue. And just like you said, 3 years ago, I was telling people that impressions were a vanity metric. But what we have to break, and the thing that I want everybody to hear today is, and attribution software companies, I think, ruined it for us. So we got to get that out of our brain, that an asset or a campaign or a channel is going to drive some kind of a direct response measurement where it's like, hey, that LinkedIn post generated this amount of revenue. We've got to break that. We've got to think about our buyers, what they need, where they're hanging out, and then how many impressions can we generate, and then how does that translate into pipeline of revenue? And Rand, I was listening to a podcast you did maybe a week or so ago, and you were talking about conversion rate improvement as well. That kind of makes sense, because if people are going to be coming to our website later because they're learning not on your website anymore, but on these other platforms, when they come to your website, they're going to be more likely to convert. So I think we should see higher conversion rate as another KPI that we might want to look into.
Yep, totally agree with that. I think it is very wise to be saying, hey, if our traffic is falling, but we're still getting relevant traffic, our conversion rate should be going up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear from the audience. Like, what KPIs are you thinking that you're going to be measured on in 2026 that you're a little nervous about? So it could be traffic. It could be conversions. I'd love to just see, I'm sure everybody, here we are in September, you're thinking about 26 at this point. What are some of those metrics that are freaking you out that maybe you need to start having conversations with your boss now about other ways to measure success? And while you're doing that, I'm just going to move into, I see Jennifer, page views, Simon, click-through rate. Rand, we've already kind of touched on zero click and buyer behavior, which was the next topic. But is there anything you want to add to just like influence and brand is more important than clicks, and why that is? We kind of explained that you did a great job of, the old journey was search, then click, then lead, then sale, and now we're in this world of zero click. Which means we're going to do something on platforms that aren't our platform. What should we be doing with that piece of content that we're creating that is quote unquote zero click? Like, what does zero click content look like?
It's different for every different platform, and it should be different for every different business. The best advice I can give you is your job is to, if you're in B2B, your job is generally to entertain and educate. And when I say entertain, I don't mean, just humorous content or those kinds of things. It needs to have a hook it's got to have some degree of personality and value and humanity. And I think B2B really, really struggles with social hooks in particular. And as a result, like you can see even LinkedIn's content trending more political, trending more social issues, trending more pop culture, trending more, conventionally attractive person in front of video. The world of B2B is consumerizing. And in order to play in that consumerizing world, you need to have an entertainment hook to your education. It cannot be, our accounting software is the best software because of these 5 reasons.
Right.
I can't, that's not going to work. I know that's not going to work. Everyone knows that's not going to work, except perhaps like a CEO who's extremely full of themselves. And it's like, no, accountants care about the best software.
And we're the best.
You need to find a way. You need to find a way to convince that person that is not what works, right? And even personal consumption habits can be effective for that. Competitor posts can be really effective for that. The thing that you're doing in the zero-click world is the same thing. If you think of it like a billboard on a highway, you need to attract attention, right? So that billboard has to be visually compelling. It's got to stand out from the landscape in the background. It has to be memorable. It has to be brand building, right? Unfortunately, I have no idea why this is. Many billboards in the real world, I'm talking about, do a poor job of giving you a brand to remember. That means optimizing things like the brand's presence and like the consistency of how the logo appears and the color scheme and layout and all these kinds of things. Same thing is true. If you look at what SparkToro does, for example, every one of our graphs uses these weird like hyper blue and hyper pink colors that you won't see in any other graph. Some people are like, it's not the most aesthetically pleasing, but it stands out.
Right.
Look at eMarketers, right? eMarketer has that like classic black and red layout that they've done for forever. Or The Economist. The Economist has this like gray charting thing, so that every chart you ever see from The Economist or from eMarketer or from SparkToro, you instantly know it's from us. Right? Like you make that brand association. You see it once, you'll see it again and again and again and again. And that brand impression, that like billboard style of convey the message quickly in a way that's compelling and memorable, that's what you have to do in zero click. You have to do it at the top of Google with an AI overview. You've got to be able to do it. If you can influence the language that ChatGPT uses, right? It's a statistical lottery that AI tools use to determine which word is going to follow after which other word. Amanda and I like to call it spicy autocomplete. You can change that. I'll tell you how I changed the one for SparkToro. For the one for me, which is that in my bio, I don't know if you read, Lauren or Paul, like you might have read my official bio, like on my page when you invite me to a podcast or something. And the words that I use there are specifically chosen so that I think it says Rand Fishkin is the co-founder and CEO of SparkToro, makers of fine audience research software. And because of that phrasing, as opposed to audience research company or the audience research makers or whatever, what I was finding was that AI tools were describing us as an agency or a service provider when I used, the wrong phrasing, like language that could be interpreted to mean we were a service provider, as opposed to if I said makers of fine audience research software. Now the AI and Google was getting us right and putting us in the right category. And because that language is copied all over the internet, every conference I speak at, every podcast I'm invited to, every YouTube channel I'm on, it's that language again and again and again. This is zero-click influence. It's even zero-view influence. I am influencing Google and AI tools through a thing that humans will rarely see.
Right. Yeah. It's so crazy, the world. And some of that kind of feels like old school SEO a little bit, get the right words, get them in there, a lot of the right places. Another thing, when I think about zero click content, you did a great job when you kind of held up your phone and you're like, people don't want to do this. They want to do this. Right. It's, we've got to remember we have an audience. Like B2B, we have an audience. They are on LinkedIn or whatever channel that we're targeting them because they're hanging out there. And what are they doing? Like, we've got to remember that we've got a partner in their pursuit, right? It's not like clickbait them. Hey, we wrote this blog. Here's the headline. Here's a link. I hope they click. It's like, no, they're passively learning. There's a reason why they're scrolling, and we need to intercept and be a part of that reason and do it in a way that gets our brand across, to your point, Rand. Also makes them think differently about their business or what they're trying to do. Because if our customers are only in market 5% of the time and 95% of the time they're not in market for what we do, then they're in passive learning mode. And so if they're in passive learning mode, we need to come alongside there and not try to do the hard pitch sell in every single piece of content that we produce. And Rand, I think you do one of the best jobs of that, certainly on LinkedIn. And you do something that I do this a little bit as well, but you do it way better than me. And that is founder-led type marketing. Like, I love your videos where it's you talking, you've got SparkToro up, you're teaching us something, and you're using your product to show us the point. I mean, that is like brilliant marketing. And I talk to B2B companies all the time about, hey, let's get your founder involved in thought leadership and posting content on LinkedIn. And they're like, I have no time for that. And it just blows my mind. What would you say to those founders that are out there thinking, I don't have time for LinkedIn or any of this kind of stuff?
I'm going to tell you something deeply embarrassing. And that is when I post those videos, which are usually 3 to 5 minutes in length, it takes me about 10 to 15 minutes to make them.
Wow.
It's one take. There's no editing. I just hit record. I do the thing. I hit stop record. I take the raw video file and I upload it. Granted, the hardest part for me, the thing that takes me the longest, is coming up with the good idea of a thing to share, right? Like, it needs a good hook. I reject probably 99 ideas in my head for every one that I actually make and publish. And that is because of the algorithmic streak phenomenon. Are you guys familiar with this?
No, what is that?
So basically, yeah. So Lauren, you're nodding your head, right? Like, so basically, like Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok's brutal about this. Basically have this idea of algorithmic streaks where if you have a successful post, your next post will be shown to a larger audience. And if you post something that doesn't do very well, you will be shown to fewer people. Yeah, so you can get into this algorithmic slump. Amanda and I have both been there over the years, right? Where we're like, crap, I'm in an algorithmic slump. I got to break out of it. Like, I need a hit piece to be able to break me back into whatever. For LinkedIn, for me, it's like, if I get more than 50,000 views on a piece of content, that's like, I've had a hit.
Right.
And if I get less than 10,000, I'm slumping. And you have to develop a feel for like the platform. The other thing I was going to say, Paul, is, and I don't say this to be self-promotional, but I really think one of the jobs that everybody has right now is figure out where your dang audience is, where they're paying attention. If you just go in and you're like, I'm in B2B, so it must be LinkedIn. I agree. It probably is. But you might be ignoring YouTube as a channel. You might be ignoring subreddits. You might be ignoring podcasts. You might be ignoring news media or hyper-specific, niche media, email newsletters, conferences and events, webinars like this one. Ignoring all that stuff and just being like, well, I guess my LinkedIn feed's the only place I can do marketing. That is dumb as hell.
It is. And quite frankly, it's dangerous. That's why we love SparkToro and love to have you maybe just explain the software to the audience a little bit. But, just like you said, I'm in B2B, therefore I must be in LinkedIn. The problem is every single B2B is thinking exactly the same thing, and you're not going to stand out in that crowd nearly as much. I'll give you a great example. For this event, we also promoted with some newsletter insertions, some very niche newsletters that speak directly to B2B marketers. And that drove more than half of the registrations for this event. And
we find the same thing.
Yeah. So tell us, exactly how can people use SparkToro to find that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Well, look, First off, I want to say SparkToro is not the only product that can do this. You want to do a big clickstream data buy, you can learn an incredible amount of detailed information about your audience. My buddy Will Reynolds, who runs Sierra Interactive, for most of their clients, they are now buying, like they do a distinct data deal and buy clickstream data of, hey, everybody who visits this website, tell me their previous journey. I want to see their previous journeys and like know what they visited before they got to the site. That's all. They'll do it for competitors, like all that kind of stuff. SparkToro is essentially an aggregation of that same kind of thing. It's saying like people who visit X or who have Y in their bio or who have Z behavior, they tend to visit these websites, listen to these podcasts, follow these YouTube channels, subscribe to these subreddits or visit them, search for these keywords in Google, use these AI tools more or less than average. Like they're on these social networks more or less than average. All that kind of stuff. And SparkToro has like pretty charts and graphs so you can kind of make the pitch to your boss or your team or your client if you're an agency to do that. And that's what people use us to do. Like very frankly, we did a bunch of customer interviewing. We thought that what people were doing was specific tactics, like building a list of sources of influence and then like pitching them somewhat. Like maybe 30% of our customers do that like PR style outreach, but most of them, they take the graph of the social networks and the AI tools and the websites and the podcasts and whatever, and then they put it in a presentation deck and they're like, boss, you need to give me money to go after these podcasts and sponsor them. And like, we need to be investing in this channel, this tactic, whatever it is. I actually think that's a great use case. It really is, right? Because it's not surveys. It's not opinions. It's not asking a few people like, hey, Paul, which groceries did you buy at the grocery store last week? And can you tell me how that compares to last year?
Yeah.
You'd be like, what? But that's what people try to do with surveys. Like, it blows my mind that hey, can you tell me all the websites you visit and all the YouTube channels and podcasts? How I describe this? What you really want, like friends, what you really want to do, if you want to be like the most effective marketer in the world is, first, go to thievery school and learn lockpicking and how to disable security alarms. Then get the home addresses of all your customers. Then you break into their house and you steal their phone and you get their unlock code and you look at everything that they subscribe to and watch and listen to and follow. And then you aggregate all that data together, right? So you get 5,000 of them. And then you look at everything they're doing and you say, okay, this is the most popular YouTube channel with this audience that's relevant to us. This is the most, these podcasts, these subreddits, these search terms in Google, all the history, blah, blah, blah. Now, this is 100% illegal and unethical, and I recommend it to no one.
Right.
It would work. It would be a great methodology. Sure. Way better than surveys, right? And interviews. Super illegal. But clickstream data, right? Like clickstream data and then social data. So social data basically says hey, here's this person's profile and here's everything they follow. You go to your Threads profile, your Blue Sky or whatever, you can see everything that an account follows. And similarly, clickstream data basically is, software that people have opted into that anonymously aggregates all the clicks that they make in their browser, every URL that they visit. And so you can essentially get this aggregated data profile of any describable audience in a product like SparkToro. And there's other ones too. There's one called Audience. I think they're mostly social data. They have an S instead of a C for audience. There's one called, BuzzSumo's parent company. I'm blanking on their name right now, but they have a product like this. It's expensive, it's enterprise level, but it's quite good. SimilarWeb is another clickstream data provider that's got some good stuff, also expensive, but quite good. We talked to them about using their clickstream stuff, but ended up going with Datos. I like ComScore still for some stuff, especially media stuff. So yeah, there's options.
SparkToro for B2B is great because one, we're not data scientists over here. We certainly aren't going to go break into people's houses and try to steal their phones. And as an agency, I need to be able to very quickly figure out for a client what channels are important, The thing I love the most are like the podcasts and then the deep cuts. Like you always are in there trying to source things that may not be the mainstream. And you can go to those deep cuts, like podcasts you may not have thought about, or people, influencers you may not have thought about. And then oftentimes they'll have a newsletter. And if they have a newsletter, oftentimes you can do a newsletter insertion with them. You can go listen to their podcast, understand what are the topics. So why does this audience want to follow this influencer? So you can get a lot of great topic ideas. And it's just easy to do. And I love how you guys added that chat feature now. So instead of trying to build an audience, I can just kind of talk to SparkToro and have you guys figure out really what we're asking for on the back end.
Yeah. We've seen a lot of people use the describe your audience feature, where they just in natural language say like, I'm looking for, women in their mid 30s who are interested in Pilates and they live in Los Angeles and, whatever. And then like SparkToro will make an LLM call, get back essentially stereotype behaviors, right? Because that's what the LLM is. LLMs are stereotype machines, right? And so they're going to give us back like, hey, here's these 10 domains that like LA, women in their 30s who are into Pilates are very interested in. And then we take that audience and like send that to the clickstream through our, the back end of our algorithm to build the audience. And it works shockingly well. Like I am quite impressed. I've been very skeptical of a lot of AI usage and tool usage lately and APIs. But this one I got to say is, I don't know.
Well, it kind of ties into
me.
The easy use. I mean, like if you think about what made ChatGPT so popular, it's like, well, I can just go talk to it and call, information back to me with just using human language. And that's what it feels like when you're using that feature in SparkToro.
This reminds me, I have an important question I think most of your audience will be interested in too. Have you guys noticed this huge trend of businesses, especially B2B, being obsessed with measuring their presence in AI tools, but not spending any effort to try and influence their prominence in the AI tools?
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing I have ever observed. Because, you remember SEO world, right? Like I was in SEO world for like 17 years. And in SEO world, everybody was always, how do I rank number one in Google? And then how do I measure my success? But in AI world, it seems they want to measure the success, but not do anything to influence it.
Right. I think it's because they don't know what to do yet. They haven't figured out what to do. I mean, we've just released a resource. We should have put it in our resource guide here today, but on, how to prepare for AEO or LMO, whatever the heck we're calling this, prepare your website, prepare your content so you're sourced inside of AI. Because there's a lot we could be doing. A lot of it's SEO related, but also it's authority. It's taking Google's EEAT and taking it to the next level. That's really what we have to do.
Well, I noticed this post. I think it was Will Reynolds on LinkedIn, who was posting about how a lot of people are saying or falsely believing they think that the creation of high quality content will help them in large language models, which is just blatantly false. Like that is not how it works. That classically, sure, that helped you in Google, right? Especially if you got lots of links to those articles or lots of clicks, and you sort of build up your algorithmic reputation with Google. But LLMs really don't care about that, right? The only thing that they care about are lots of documents citing and using the words in the same document. And so, if you want, if I want to be associated with audience research software, or let's say I want the snack bar at the end of the world, right? Our video game, one of my other companies. If I want snack bar at the end of the world to be associated with indie video games, then I need to make sure that documents that mention indie video games or indie, new releases, it won't come out till 2027, but I need to make sure that snack bar at the end of the world is in most of those documents. Mm-hmm. That is PR.
Exactly.
It is not. It has almost nothing to do with the quality of the content that sits on, my website or in snack bar's case, like maybe my Steam page or whatever. And it, again, boggles my mind how many people use AI and don't know how it works. Like when I look at, I don't know, Lauren, like, and Paul, like if you guys look at the output of an AI tool, whenever I see it give a response, the thing that I think to myself is, oh, that is interesting that word frequently comes after that word in lots of documents.
Right.
I can't, like, I don't know how to I don't know how to see it as like content itself. I just see it as patterns.
I've even asked AI before, like, why did you respond that way?
And it lies to you, right? Like, it won't give you a real answer.
Yeah, but it's so curious. It's still interesting to see like why it does that. It's always like very like, well, I did it because of this amazing reason. And you're like, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. At the very basic of AI and the responses that it gets. I think you touched on this a little bit earlier, Rand, but it's like, what words are in proximity to these other words, and so it's out there crawling the web like Google used to crawl the web, but it's looking for these connections between this word A and word B and word C. And based on the questions that we're asking it's compiling that back to us. It really doesn't know that much. It's just bringing back together that it thinks are in random or in patterns that will be helpful to you,
Yes, exactly.
And that's why AI is never going to give us anything novel. I mean, you're never going to get anything good, like new from AI. It's just going to regurgitate what's already out there.
That's exactly right. It's spicy autocomplete, right? And Lauren, I love this this question because I think a lot of people do that, right? They ask AI tools, "How do you work?" or "Why did you give me this response?" or that kind of thing. And again, there's like I want to say, I think it might have been OpenAI themselves published some documentation about why it will never answer you correctly, and it will never tell you sort of how or why it works or why it gives you a particular answer, because in early versions of ChatGPT, you could trick it, sort of like through questions like that. You could trick it into giving you the document sources where it got particular information, which of course would let Anthropic or DeepSeek replicate, ChatGPT's methodology and document database and stuff. And so I could be wrong. Maybe it was Anthropic who published this, but so the net is that when you ask it that question, it does the same thing it does with anything else. It tells you words that frequently come after other words on the internet about how ChatGPT works. Right. And so like,
it's not getting the secret sauce. Yeah. It's just giving you the answer, right? That based on everything else that it knows. It's really not telling you what it knows. It's just, again, giving you an answer based on words that are connected to the words that you asked. So, hey, let's touch on that because I'm looking at the clock. We got about 10 minutes left. And I do, you've got this Datos report that just came out, and it's super fascinating because everybody's saying, oh my gosh, Google's dying. The traffic, obviously, we know that traffic is dying. You touched on this a little bit at the beginning, but I think what your report really showed is that, yes, traffic is going down, but usage really is not going down. Is that what you found?
Right. The number of heavy Google users, people who search Google 10 or more times in a month, has not declined in the last 2 years, 2.5 years. The number of people, the number of searches on average that searchers perform in Google has gone up, not down. When people use AI tools, they tend to use Google more after they adopt AI tools. So you can see that there was that SEMrush report using Datos data that pointed out exactly that. The surveys, which is what the media tends to cover, a lot of surveys will ask people, are you replacing Google with ChatGPT or other AI tools? And the answer to that question is almost always yes. I think it's like 60% or 70% of Americans are saying that they replace their Google usage with ChatGPT or another AI tool. I don't think they're lying. I just think that is an incomplete answer to what's really going on. And the reason that you see the number of searches per searcher going up, the reason that you see traffic falling is because what's happening is that when people perform informational tasks inside an AI tool, they then go to search engines, mostly Google, and they validate and verify information, and they, type in the brand to go to the website and like all this kind of stuff. What's happening is a disintermediation of the exploratory process that used to happen exclusively through search engines. That is being lost to AI tools, including Google itself, right? Like Google's AI mode and AI overviews, like that's taking its own share. And that's leading to this zero-click world. But it is also leading to people who started that journey, that exploratory journey, getting to a place where they have a brand preference or brands that they're going to check out, and they go to Google much faster than they ever did before, right? Like that whole exploratory process is being shrunk from 15 searches in Google that led to 50 different website clicks, right? Like you ask for the best hotels in Osaka, Japan, inside a particular budget range and whatever. And like ChatGPT spits out these 4 hotels, and then you go to Google and you search for those 4 hotels and you buy one of them. That's super different from I do a search for best hotels and then I click like 10 results in Google and I read a bunch of things, and then TripAdvisor links to this other thing and I check out that website and this one's wrong and that one's wrong and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I go bounce back and back and back and back. And then I buy. That process is getting disintermediated, but the number of searches doesn't drop necessarily in Google, and the number of purchases doesn't drop either. Right. At the end of the buying cycle, someone's still buying a hotel in Osaka. That I think there's like this misunderstanding of how it's changing the ecosystem of search and discovery. And if you grok that, like if you understand it, then you can play the right way. And the right way is I need to influence people in the new path of discovery and exploration. And I need to influence the sources that are affecting that. The AI overview answers, the AI mode answers, the answers in ChatGPT and Perplexity and Gemini and Copilot and all those places.
Right. Yeah. To me, that was a great cherry on top, because the fear when you hear things like the clickless future and traffic going away is, oh my gosh, sales are going to go away. Because for the last 25 years, we've correlated, traffic to my website means more conversions, means more sales. But just like we said at the very top of this show, just because clicks are going away doesn't mean that people are not buying. They're not clicking, but they're still buying. And so
look at the consumer spending numbers in the United States and the business spending numbers in the United States. They haven't dropped. They have stayed the same, right? They're proportionate to economic growth. I grant that we're probably in a recessionary environment or about to enter one, but the tariffs thing is affecting that. But like it is not this world of like sales are dying. It's just traffic that's dying. Right. And the brands that understand that you can create influence without traffic and how to do that are going to win more of the sales.
Yeah, I think you did a post on this a while back, and I've used it a lot, which is the whole idea of HubSpot's traffic going away, like 80% of their traffic, yet their stock is over $500 a share. They're not hurting. They're not hurting at all. They've just kind of figured out. In fact, they killed at Inbound. They announced that the funnel is dead and the loop marketing is their new way of marketing. We'll see how that plays out. But the point is, they have figured out that they don't need traffic, and necessarily does not correlate directly to growth. And so, hey, Rand, as we wrap up here, think about this audience. They're B2B marketers. They're struggling about 26. They're struggling and thinking about, gosh, what am I going to do? Where should my focus be? How can I lead my company well in 26 from a marketing perspective? You got any last minute just advice, like real tactical things for them to be thinking about?
Ooh, yeah. One of the things that I see people do a lot is they try and do the things we talked about here, figure out their audience's sources of influence, and then be present in those places. But they make the mistake, we make the mistake, I think we all do, of falsely assuming that the places where the influence happens can be directly impacted rather than that it's an indirect impact. And one of the things that has a huge indirect impact and that affects, the HubSpot loop marketing concept and all of this is product. I fully believe that marketing's biggest opportunity in most mature and even like mid-size and scaling businesses is not in your LinkedIn feed or your Google search results or your AI tool responses. It is in what your product does and how successfully it does them for customers in a way that makes them want to talk about it and share. If there is some way that you as a marketer can sit in the next product brainstorming meeting or like go through your product and be like, hey, if we change these 5 things in the product and how it worked, I know that we would get way more people talking about us and sharing. That's the biggest missed opportunity. I wish the C-suite would let marketers influence product the way product is allowed to dictate marketing.
Yeah,
because
that's
let
so
me tell
good.
you, that's how to change it.
Yeah, because if we can ensure that the customers that we have receive the value that they bought in the first place, because I think that's what you're talking about. It's like, we're out there selling stuff.
Not just the value, a reason to talk about the value. There's this like famous Paul Graham essay from years ago that's like, make something people want. And my argument would be that's not enough anymore. Make something people want to talk about.
Oh, that's good.
You've got to make something people want to talk about. If there's a sharing loop, a reason for people to, an incentive, emotional or because it makes them look good or it makes their team look good or whatever, if you can get that in your product, you will have way more success. This is super true in B2B, where sharing among small groups of audiences has a massive impact on your brand's penetration.
Yeah, man, Pierre, in today's world, like even just think about the impact of influencer marketing in B2B in the last 18 to 24 months. It's just blown up because we believe what other people say about our products way more than what we say about our products.
Word of mouth, man. Word of mouth.
Yeah, Rand, this has been so good. Lauren, I see that our chat has blown up the whole time. Is there maybe 1 or 2 good questions we can ask Rand before we wrap?
Man, we had so many questions, Paul. I think the one that's like most relevant to the conversation you were just having, it was asked earlier on. It was basically, is the decision portion of the funnel now like extended with this new paradigm that we're seeing?
Is it extended?
Yes. Like, is it longer?
I don't think so. Well, okay, here's what I'm going to say. I think the answer is, like all marketing answers, it depends. Some buyer cycles are definitely getting shortened, but some are getting expanded because more options are being presented to people because of, AI responses, AI tools, Google doing their AI overview things and presenting more options right in there. So the only way to truly know if this is the case is to watch your audience. One of the ways I recommend this is like, if you're using SparkToro or another product like that, like go search for people who visit your website. And then if you look at the list of people who visit your website and you see what other websites, especially the high affinity sites and hidden gem sites, if those are competitors or like comparison stuff and the affinity is rising over time, that suggests that more people are visiting more of those sites over time. And if instead it's more like, oh no, actually what they seem to be consuming is like content websites in the field or educational content or, that kind of stuff, influencer content, then you'll see like those competitor sites and those comparison sites declining in affinity. And it changes, like it is different for different fields for sure.
Yeah. The one thing I believe, and I can't prove this out, this is totally a theory right now, but that deal velocity will actually get a little bit better because less people are going to be coming to the website early cycle. And being an old sales guy, I know all about sandbagging and throwing things in my pipeline that didn't really need to be there, or back in the old MQL days when we were tracking things that really didn't matter. But now I believe what's going to happen is we're going to have more SQLs. We're going to have more things rolling into pipe that are really pipe, and that the deal velocity of those things in our pipeline might happen faster. But I don't know that it's going to be a true apples to apples comparison because we're measuring things differently now than what we were doing even a few months ago. But that was a great question. And Rand, thank you so much again. This has been like just so awesome to have you on our show, and just so glad that you came. And thank you for sharing all the great truth bombs that you dropped today. And thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you guys next month. We're going to be talking about what's going on in the world of content syndication. Is there still a place for that in the world? We've got Netline that's going to join us next month. They are kind of the kings, if you will, of content syndication. It's kind of fallen out of favor lately, so it'll be interesting to see what they're saying about how to leverage that as part of your pipeline growth plans for 2026. So thanks everybody for joining us. Rand, again, thank you so much. This has been awesome. You guys have a great rest of your day. Thanks everybody.